Hello and welcome, everyone. Today I have a very special guest, one of my amazing good friends, Lauren, and someone I am completely inspired by, magically and as a person in the world. And this topic we are covering today is going to be all about Thelema and relationships. So, in the words of Phyllis Seckler, two Thelemites cannot live together. So, Lauren, could you go ahead and introduce yourself and share some of your magical background?
You bet. Well, first of all, I'm not sure if that's the exact quote, but
paraphrase.
If two Thelemites can't live together, then certainly like 3, 4, 5, 6 plus Thelemites would have challenges living together. But yeah, I'm Lauren Gardner. I am a psychotherapist in private practice in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. That's what I do for a living. But I've been a student of, Thelema, Golden Dawn, magic, associated kinds of traditions for my whole adult life, more or less, focusing more on Thelema kind of into my 30s and more on Golden Dawn back during my 20s. So really excited to be here and to kind of, be supporting my wonderful friend Lynn and kind of what she's doing here. So you yourself are quite an inspiration.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
By the way, so
oh my gosh.
Thrilled to be able to be here. Yeah.
Likewise, and I think this is so amazing to have these conversations, especially with someone as radiant and as amazing as you, and to share some of your perspective to a larger audience and with my YouTube channel. So thank you.
Yeah.
So getting into Thelema and relationships. So this is kind of by the way, everyone, this is a casual chat. I don't have any slides or animations or anything, so we're just going to be sort of sharing our perspectives. And it was funny with that quote because right now, actually, Richard and I, it's not a secret, I am dating Richard, and we actually don't live together. Our current living situation is we are apart.
Well, I think what it speaks to is just the changing norms around relationships.
Sure.
And sort of the times that we're in, at least, with this particular moment, like, people have different needs in terms of being able to pay attention, to concentrate, to, like, everyday life is really complicated. And the norms around like nuclear families and, two parents in this ranch home with like, 3 kids or something.
Yeah.
And like, the grandparents live somewhere else. And it's, the idea of having a single family home in this kind of traditional 1950s terms, it's outdated.
Yeah, that's
people
absolutely
are in
true.
long-distance relationships. People are in polyamorous relationships. People might be like really great, wonderful friends, but not the best as roommates. And I think we just have to look at all the dimensions of a relationship to see, like, okay, who can live together, and what ends up not working, and being able to look at it as something, like an intentional decision, in the same way as having a wedding is an intentional decision, or choosing to get legally married is an intentional decision, or choosing to have relationship anarchy is an intentional decision. Same thing as living together.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point that within a Thelemic framework in particular, you do have options available to you. And this really goes back to the core central philosophical statement, which is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, and love is the law, but love under will. So for me, it's being open-minded. It's being aware enough to be able to follow your will in a direction, even if that bristles against perhaps larger societal expectations, larger expectations of your family. Being open to follow that core, that string, that golden thread, if you want to imagine it as such, unapologetically. And so, yeah, that may be very unconventional. And I think there is a stereotype that all Thelemites are, out here living wild lifestyles. I would not consider my lifestyle wild. It's actually quite bookish, as a lot of people know, and quite introverted and very hermit-like. Same with Richard. But it is quite unconventional because, currently, it works best for us to be able to do what we need to do in the world to live separately, so...
Well, and that's just it. Like, you have to sort of think very seriously and very clearly about what conditions are necessary for you to be able to accomplish your true will. And for me with ADHD, I had to realize, okay, I need a separate room that is a studio space that I can close the door in and say, when I'm in here, I'm doing my work, I'm focusing on a writing project, I'm focusing on answering emails, doing administrative tasks, right? Responding to student replies that require me to really sort of, be thoughtful and careful in how I'm responding. And I cannot do that in an environment where there's other things going on.
Sure.
So it's not possible for me to always adapt to the kind of circumstances I find myself in. And so we're putting an addition on our house in order to actually have like extra space to be able to do the things we need to do. And that's great.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome.
But sometimes you have to just kind of accept, like, all right, what I'm trying to do isn't working here. And there's a solution that might not be very convenient or easy, but is necessary. So, like, all right, here's where your true will is. Here's what you've got to do to be able to fulfill it. And, like, be really practical about that. It might just be that, all right, the job that's paying you 6 figures or whatever is not allowing you to do the rest of your true will. And then it's a big choice of, like, all right, what do I let go of?
Yeah. It is. So that begs the question. Should someone achieve K&C or knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel before getting married?
I think it sure helps. I mean, I've gotten flack for saying this before, and like David Shoemaker laughs at me when I say it, but I think if you have knowledge and conversation before you get married, you're not really as likely to be surprised and have to sort of like reinvent your whole life when you actually kind of figure out, what that implies. And I mean, there's more subtle layers to it too, but if you can do that first, I think it makes life a hell of a lot easier. And also, I think like, okay, women in our generation are getting married later on in life because it takes a long ass time to like go through school, get a job that's paying you a living wage, get to know yourself, be confident and comfortable in your physicality, your sexuality, and what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So, I got married at 40.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, some people never get married, but also like, all right, making that kind of commitment to someone else, you need to know yourself in a really deep way. And if you don't, things tend to not go well. And whether that actually is, full on knowledge and conversation, you need to at least have some kind of awareness of what your true will is or isn't.
Yeah. And I think especially, I mean, a lot of people pursue different spiritual paths, but like within a Thelemic context, especially, like once you begin that path to the great work, once you start that journey, as I always say, I don't recommend, if you're comfortable and happy in your life exactly as it is, perhaps maybe this isn't for you. But if you start that journey, I think it is reasonable to expect some huge changes in your life, how you perceive yourself, how you perceive your surroundings. It really is something that will uproot you, and be prepared to be taken for a ride. And I don't just mean, my car stopped working. No, I mean like your whole world is going to look different, and that could mean big life changes like a divorce or, moving halfway across the world. That is not unheard of, all of these things. And for me personally to share too, I have never been married. So, hopefully that's in my future, but, I'm on my way to 40 myself. So,
I didn't think I was going to either, but I think it's really about if you can center your true will, and again, from a Thelemic perspective, you can center your true will as the most important thing for you to be doing in your life, and start there, and then build the rest of your life around it. It just works.
It does, and it really feels like things click into place. And I think this is something I talked about recently, because I recently did an exploration of what the Scarlet Woman is, and people are really... There's an unfortunate conflation that happens, and not to like rehash my video for
conflation. That's one way of putting it. I agree.
So, not to like rehash that topic, but I think it's important, especially for women coming into the Thelemic world and starting to do this work, because it is so beautiful and rewarding, and there is space for you to be a magician, not just a magician's helper. And so the Book of the Law talks about the Scarlet Woman thing, blah, blah. And I think it's important to remember that the Scarlet Woman and the Beast are spiritual offices they are not aspirations for every people. So, I mean, Phyllis Seckler, when she talked about this, she said, well, the Scarlet Woman on the very baseline has to have knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, and then also has to fulfill all of this other criteria as laid out in the Book of the Law. Jane Wolfe came close, but, you know, whatever. You can have many opinions on this, but the take-home message at the end of the day is that if you are entering Thelema, if you are entering this spiritual path, be careful not to take the dogma and the suffocation of Christian morals and values of your larger societies you come from and then quickly replace it with something else. This is ultimately your spiritual path. You are driving that ship. This is about you and your own divinity, and how you should be living your life, your relationship style, what that looks like should be in alignment with your will, and it should not be coming from, oh, well, my partner wants to do this. My partner wants to, I mean, yeah, that's cool if you want to honor that and like go with that, but like it should not be in direct conflict with yourself, and you should not be, as a Thelemite, shrinking yourself to fit in somewhere where you don't belong, whatever that is.
But that's where I think you really owe it to yourself and to whoever you're making a commitment to in your relationship to have some awareness of what your true will is.
Exactly.
Before making that kind of lifelong commitment to someone. Because if you're not really sure, and if they're not really sure, problems. Lots of problems. All kinds of problems. And divorce is expensive. It is stressful. Like, you know, in North Carolina, you got to be separated for a year. Like, I've seen clients go through this kind of stuff. You know, in my therapy practice, it's awful. It's devastating. And a breakup of any kind is hard enough.
It is. It is. And I think that, you know, if, like I said, if you're going down this path, you're going to go down this path. Like, you're going to be experiencing the things we have all experienced. So yeah, cheers to waiting.
Cheers.
Yay.
But I think that's true of jobs too. I mean,
true.
In terms of any kind of commitment that we might make to our future, whether that's a marriage or even like going to college, going to graduate school, like you owe it to yourself to be really pretty clear on this is what I need to be able to accomplish my will. And you might not know for sure.
Yeah.
But the best thing that you can do for yourself is find ways to get clear on that. And that could be all kinds of things, from like therapy to self-reflection to learning how to understand and work with your own dreams to any of the techniques that we use for self-knowledge, you know, in Thelema and other kinds of ceremonial magic, like, you know, divination. Like, those are the kinds of tools you can use to kind of get some clarity on what is a path that's going to work out for you versus not.
Yeah. So I guess that sort of this question kind of came to my mind is, what are some...
I love it when you crack up like that.
I'm cracking myself up.
We're trying to not,
I'm trying not to say something too unhinged. Okay, so
Stop fighting it.
What are some red flags and what are some green flags if someone is on the right path with regards to their relationship? Like, what are some things that happen that are like, oh yes, I'm doing it right, and what are some things that are like, oh, this is not good?
Well, who am I speaking to?
If
I'm speaking to women, it's going to be different than if I'm speaking to men, than if I'm speaking to, you know, any particular kind of
let's speak to women first.
Okay,
let me just say this, because I feel like women in...
It's a huge question, and like the answer is going to be really different.
It is, and I think that there are some answers for like everyone.
Yeah.
So, but let's start with the more narrow response for women in particular, because I feel like there's a lot of women coming into spaces, especially in the occult and ceremonial magic, who need to hear this, because they're like, oh, I got my first boyfriend, he's a Thelemite, this is normal, and then it is not normal. So let's start there.
You need to be treated with respect. Period, new sentence. If it doesn't feel respectful to you, talk about it, right? If it doesn't feel respectful to you, going in and saying like, oh, maybe I should be more flexible. Like, it doesn't matter if it bothers you that he's into, or she, right? Like, your significant other's super into OTO. And you're like, well, I just have to accept this because, you know, they're saying it's like key part of their true will. Okay, fine, but it bothers me. Talk about it. Don't just assume that you're, you know, too much. Talk about it. right? I mean, like being able to kind of work this out. You and your significant other are a force in and of yourself. You two have your own egregore.
True.
Any relationship has its own egregore.
And I will say too, things like this could hurt more in the short term to bring up, oh, I had a problem with this or this didn't work for me. But your relationship going forward will be so much more healthier if you can establish that level of understanding, that free communication. And quite frankly, the depth of your relationship really depends on how far you're willing to go with honesty. And it's scary, and no one likes to bring up super honest things, whatever that could be in any context, right? But I've realized that the health of any relationship, including friendships, really relies on honesty and taking that next step to be honest. And it develops more intimacy at the end of the day. Even though the conflict may be short, it may be heated, it may be like unpleasant, but once you get past that, things are going to be so much better. So good.
It's stressful, but if you are able to do it successfully, it feels so good.
Yes.
I mean, it feels so good to just kind of be like, all right, I am not holding anything. I'm not feeling stressed about anything anymore. Like, I've gotten it all off my chest.
Yeah.
And, like, things are better. And we're able to, like, reconnect in this place of, like, you know, love toward one another. Like, that's the best thing ever.
Absolutely.
And, you know, especially if you're in the domain of like polyamory, open relationships, anything like this is a skill you've got to have. If your relationship is going to survive, you know, you've got to be like excellent at communication. And in therapy all the time, I'm saying, you know, especially when I work with couples, like, all right, everybody talks about communication, but the prerequisite to good communication is good self-awareness. And Thelema and magic is going to help you get to that self-awareness if you let it. And so will things like learning about psychology, you know, being able to do your own self-reflection.
Yeah, very true. And good points. And good points all around. And then so in the green flag category, I would say someone who's willing to listen is definitely a green flag. So people who show up, show interest in your interests. What are some specific thelemic green flags? Not forcing you to do things, honestly. Someone, if you say, no, I'm not into that, and they just let it go. Be like, okay, this isn't what you're about, you know?
Tolerance. I mean, it's like, I think we talk a lot about Thelema, but like, what is an agape green flag? Because Thelema and agape are equivalent. You know, they both add up to the same number, 93. So we talk all the time about Thelema, but the other side of that coin is agape. And we don't talk as much about agape, which is, you know, like, hey, I love you, I care about you, and like, I know that you really hate to eat Thai food, so like, we're not gonna I'm not even gonna ask you to get Thai food because I know you well enough to know, like, random example.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, what does agape look like in terms of not just tolerance, but being loving towards someone else?
Yeah.
And that's what we miss, but it's just as core to Thelema as Thelema is, you know?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I love that. And when it comes to thelemic dating, I just put this out here. Something about myself is I never expected to date another Thelemite at all. Like it's just I had aspirations, but I fully accepted our community is so small that the dating pool was so tiny. I was like, this is never going to happen. And I was another component for me, and like, doing my will was I knew exactly what I wanted, and I wasn't going to settle for something I felt uncomfortable in. So, you know, just for me personally, and not speaking for anyone else, I did not want to enter into like a polyamorous situation where someone was already married and like go into that. That just wasn't for me personally. I would much rather just be single and doing my own thing. And so when you are like, narrow your search kind of in those realms, it was just not many people at all. But you know, the universe had some surprises in store for me.
It always does. If you can just kind of be open to, you know, whatever happens to be right, you know, it always end up being surprised. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, thelemic green flags, I feel like, well, if someone's really a Thelemite, it's kind of a green flag in and of itself from where I sit, because it tells me, all right, this person knows and respects the fact that their first obligation in their life is going to be for them to know and to follow their true will. that also means that the flip side of that, presuming they don't have some sort of, condition that prevents them being able to have empathy and awareness of other human beings as independent stars in their own right, which is maybe a big presumption sometimes, right? But also, easy enough to kind of keep an eye out for if you know what to watch out for, that they would also extend a similar recognition to you that your primary responsibility in your life is to know and to do your true will, and that everything else is secondary to that.
Yeah.
And so that also means, okay, how can we support each other in doing our true wills?
Yeah.
As a team.
Absolutely.
As a team and as allies. In our wedding vows, we swore to be constant allies. And I like that.
Absolutely.
Because it's about, okay, I could use an ally to do my true will sometimes, and so could he. And that's what it's all about.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And
we're about the same thing, and our true wills are, more or less aligned. They're not perfectly the same, but they're going in a similar direction.
And so you heard it here first. Being a Thelemite is a green flag.
To me it is.
It is for me.
If you really mean it. And there's plenty of people who are going to say, oh, I'm a Thelemite, and they're edgy, and they don't really kind of understand that to really be a Thelemite as much means extending that agape to people around you as it does being focused on your true will. I think where we are in this moment in our culture is being very individually focused. This is especially true in the U.S. and kind of Western cultures, Western societies. Just kind of sitting with how important it is right now for each of us, first and foremost, as priority number one, is being clear on what your own true will is. And, this started out as something you'd only hear about in sort of mental health therapy groups of put your own oxygen mask on first, and then you can help others. This whole metaphor of take care of yourself first, then you can take care of people around you. But it's a huge paradigm shift from the Christian model of become selfless and take care of other people first. And no, you're not really going to be able to do that in a sustainable way unless you take care of yourself first. Get clear on your own true will first. Know what your needs are. Know when they're satisfied. Know when they're not. And that might mean I need to sleep in until 10 a.m. Because I'm a night owl. And I'm not going to get to bed till 2. I need to sleep in till 10 a.m. And that's just me. And that means anybody who's in a relationship with you, you're clear on that. They need to respect that.
Absolutely.
And, the other side of that might be all right, well, my true will is, this. Okay, you have to kind of be clear on that. And have other people around you who can support and honor that.
That's beautiful. I love that. And so something that came to mind is someone who's perhaps interacting with Thelema for the very first time in our community and okay, I'm dating a Thelemite guy. What does that mean? Is he just an edgelord who, read something, satanic and is ready to go, work with a clip-off and the 15, sometimes 16 kalas, or is he... Is he actually...
You lose count. I would think you'd lose count before 15 or 16.
You would. I think you would. And then you would write about it, and then you would lose track about what you're saying, and the number would change from paragraph to paragraph. So, but my point here is how would you know what kind of, not what kind of Thelemite you're dating, but is this person an authentic part of our community who's engaging with the work? And so, this is going to be a really cheap answer, and it does not apply to everyone. Please don't get offense to this. But one thing that is true is if you are looking for a more bookish guy in particular, a Thelemite who's in an order, and I'm not saying what particular order, but at some point, you're going to have to get bookish. You're going to have to buckle down and start studying and know your stuff. You can't remain for a long time in any organization. Asterisk most organizations without knowing your stuff and really engaging with it. Whereas, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, and it's also a question of all right, if whoever's listening, if it's you dating a Thelemite for the first time and you don't really know what that is or kind of what to compare it to, or if it's you as a Thelemite, how do I have a relationship with someone else? The point is the same. You want to know what your own true will is.
Yes.
And from there, be able to be with someone else who has some reasonable knowledge and awareness of what their true will is, such that you can build a life together.
Yeah, and regardless of what that looks for. But ultimately, I think regardless of labels, I think look for someone who honors your own divinity, your own stardom. Look for someone who honors that path and trajectory you're on and helps you do it. Not someone you feel like you have to diminish yourself around or take parts of yourself and put them in boxes and put them away. That's not what a relationship should be about. But especially as Thelema, because I come back to the quote from the Book of the Law, every man and every woman is a star. So it's important to remember that it doesn't say every man is a star and women serve them. That's not what's going on there, Every Thelemite woman is not,
She's a hollow star you can do whatever you want with, right? That's
Yeah,
how this works. Yeah, okay, like a hollow vacuum that is sucking your soul out,
Yeah,
and slowly destroying you. Like, yes, that's what
it's a black hole.
Yeah, well, people can kind of have black hole qualities, right?
Sure.
So, like, if you have that in yourself, go get therapy, get your own healing, like, do whatever it takes to kind of, like, get that straight in yourself. Mm-hmm. And if it's somebody you love and care about, give them the space to be able to do their own work, because, you can't heal somebody else. You got to heal your own self.
And know your limits, too. At some point, if you're working on those kind of deeper issues, you need a trained and licensed therapist. You need, as much as I want to heal other people, I would like that to be the case, but I recognize the limits of my qualifications, the limits of my studies. I am not a trained and licensed person to help anyone on this stuff. So at some point, it's like, it's time to seek, you deserve it. You deserve the best care possible, and that's going to be outside of what I have to offer as a person. And this could be friendships as well.
Well, and I think, not to sort of damage or destroy my own business or my own craft with this, is even a therapist cannot heal you.
Sure.
You got to heal yourself. And the best thing any therapist can do is help you to be able to see where that threshold is. It happens a lot in sort of therapy groups where somebody will be right up against that threshold where it's like, okay, they can step across and begin to kind of explore what it is that's coming up for them that the whole group is feeling.
Sure.
And group therapy is a magical endeavor in every sense of the word. You got to be willing to step across that threshold and say, yes, I want to know what this is. Yes, I want to open this up. Yes, I want to be able to get healing from this, whatever it is. I have to be willing to cross that threshold. If you want to get the healing, that's what it takes. So I think that's what often gets missed from sort of some of the therapy discourses is like, scary.
Sure.
It's not just go to therapy and then like pay somebody some money or use your insurance or whatever, talk about yourself, and then you're fixed. Like, it requires, it requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of determination. It requires you to really want to be the best version of yourself.
So true.
And, those are things that can take a minute to get to. And those are the kind of things you want to look for in terms of a partner, because that means that's somebody who's really valuing working on themselves too.
Yeah, those are fantastic points. Yeah, thank you for that. I think we covered some really good take-home messages for people in relationships in general. We couched this in Thelema, but honestly, these are just life skills. That's what I feel like.
Well, to me, it's an indication that sort of Thelema is describing the cultural shift we're already seeing. It's describing this cultural shift of people prioritizing their own well-being, their own health, and really recognizing that they can't be of service to others until and unless they're healthy in and of themselves.
Absolutely.
And healthy on all the levels. And that can be a great excuse for self-care, being like, okay, my self-care is I'm going to get a 3-hour mani-pedi and a massage and spend a whole bunch of money and go shopping and buy a bunch of things that are terrible for the environment under this excuse of self-care. So we got to be honest with ourselves about okay, knowing yourself well enough to know what do you really need to accomplish your true will and to support others in doing theirs.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, this was a really wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for that. And for people who are interested in hearing more from your perspective or possibly connecting with some of the work you've been doing, what is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so I have a website, so laurengardnerphd@gmail.com. You can email me. You can also just type my name in and search. You'll be able to find my website. And yeah, I don't have a huge social media presence. I'm pretty quiet. I am on Facebook, so you may be able to find me there. But mostly I kind of keep to myself.
Great. Well, this
Yeah.
wraps it up. Thank you so much for having this
Yeah.
conversation with me. As always, I wanted to thank all of our viewers and listeners and supporters. Thank you for making this possible. I appreciate you all so much. I am the center of expression for the primal will to good, and so are you. Thanks for watching.